Hello, welcome to today's InstaLive. And today we are back and we're going to talk about oxidative stress and fertility. And this is such an important topic that maybe a lot of you are not aware of how important it is and how oxidative stress can affect fertility. So I'm going to be joined by Vladimiro Silva, who is an embryologist at Fertility, which is a clinic in Portugal. And that is actually where I am at the moment, is in Lisbon. I came here for a bit of work and holidays and trying to enjoy a bit of nice weather as well. So we're going to be joined by Vladimiro, who is going to talk to us today about the importance of managing oxidative stress in fertility. Let's see if we can bring Vladimiro to today's InstaLive. And if you have any questions, make sure you get ready to type them down in comments.
Hello.
Hello,
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 Andrea. How are
Vladimiro.
you?
I'm okay. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. So nice to be here with you.
Brilliant. I'm in Lisbon today.
Okay. Well, cool.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
good
Okay.
weather.
Yeah, here too. I'm
Thank you
actually
so.
close to Porto at the moment, but
Are you?
so here we are.
Thank you so much for taking today's invitation to talk about oxidative stress, which I think can be a complex topic to understand to some people. But however, it's so important, and it can make such a big difference to eggs and sperm. So maybe we can start from the beginning. Can you explain in simple words what is oxidative stress?
Um, okay. Oxidative stress is what we call the damage to our cells that are caused by free radicals, the damage to our cells and tissues that are caused by free radicals that exist all over the environment. Uh, and obviously, those are very associated with diet, with lifestyle, with certain conditions, with pollution, with radiation. I mean, even our own body can create um, oxidative stress. I mean, we can have a trigger of oxidative stress temporarily as a response to a disease, to a virus, for example, like the
Yeah.
coronavirus, and so on. And so these oxygen-free radicals, they attack human tissues, human cells and human tissues. And obviously, the reproductive tissues are among the targets of those free radicals, of those nasty free radicals.
So what I'm understanding is that our body naturally produces free radicals as part of the normal bodily processes, but if we do certain things in our lifestyle, or if we are exposed to certain aspects in our environment, we produce more of those free radicals. Maybe
Exactly.
even more than our body is not able to get rid of them. And the way I learned about oxidative stress was almost like a car that is working and you have the escape fumes coming out of the car. But in oxidative stress, we are working really hard, but we can't escape those gases, those free radicals.
Yeah, those are byproducts of our natural metabolism. Okay, so our cells have these very small structures called the mitochondria that work to generate energy to the cell. What we call the ATP. It's the
Yeah.
molecule that provides energy to the cells, and so free radicals are a byproduct of this ATP formation. So when the cell is producing energy, it is at the same time producing free radicals. Obviously, these in several circumstances, those as a consequence of exposure to stress, to environmental factors, and so our body produces more of these byproducts, of these free radicals. But obviously, those free radicals are present also in cigarette smoke, pesticides, pollution. I mean, it's all over, okay? And it's very associated, especially with stress, with our more with nowadays lifestyle, and obviously it can damage all cells. I mean, it's associated with several types of cancer, with many other diseases, and obviously this includes the reproductive tissues. And there are several studies. Maybe we can talk about that later.
Yeah.
But again, the problem is this. So this is something that a lot of people have studied, and we all. This is why we always say, if you want to be fertile, you first have to be in good health, with a very good lifestyle, because we know that by having a balanced lifestyle, a balanced nutrition, the risk of having those factors, in those imbalanced factors, will be way much lower.
And if oxidative stress is affecting all the cells in the body, when we think about our most precious cells, the eggs and sperm that need to grow and develop, and they need to multiply a lot to make a baby, what is the biggest risk? What happens to those cells? Is it the DNA? Is it chromosomal abnormalities? Or is it sperm with two heads? What happens?
Okay, it's actually different, and we don't have a complete knowledge of the mechanism by which those free radicals damage the reproductive cells. We know that reactive oxygen species, or free radicals, they can affect DNA integrity in the sperm nucleus by inducing the breakage of DNA strands. They can cause base modification. They can cause chromatin cross-linking. So this is so there are they can cause what we call the DNA fragmentation to happen, and so this is especially serious because spermatozoa, they are not protected against these cells. So the sperm is a particularly vulnerable cell that has no defenses against these reactive oxygen species, or these free radicals. And so obviously this is a risk, and one of the and this is why there are also, I forgot to mention, the apoptosis mechanism, so the natural death of the cells that are triggered by these oxidative species. So I mean, there are many ways. There are several theories on the way that we know that they are bad. Okay, we know that they
Yeah.
damage the cells. We know that they interfere either with the nucleus, the DNA strands. Like I said, there are studies talking about the effect on the mitochondria. I mean, there is the interference of many physiological pathways of the sperm on how the sperm works, and obviously, but all of this is not completely clear. Probably it's a little bit of everything,
Yeah.
but at the same time, it can't be that hard. Okay, so let me explain how to put this. Obviously, we know that we all know men who smoke and take drugs and drink alcohol and still have kids. Okay,
Yeah.
so obviously there is it changes from a person to the other, and so they can affect different patients in different ways. Okay, so obviously we know that this is deleterious. We really don't know exactly the extent on which it will affect every single individual. But we know for a fact that it will always be negative. Okay, there is. I'm talking. Okay, if you want to add
No,
something,
absolutely.
please go ahead because there is so much to say. Because the problem, when I saw this topic, I immediately thought, well, oxidative stress. There is so much to say about this because there is really. There is really a lot of ways in which lifestyle and environmental effects factors can affect the human fertility. For example, in the case of the sperm, we have essentially two ways in which these environmental factors and lifestyle factors affect. Either they affect the man directly, or they have affected the man while his mother was pregnant with him.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so one of the most obviously, especially in the case of male fertility, we really don't know exactly what causes many of the abnormalities of the alterations that we see here in clinical practice. But we know, for example, that when a mother is pregnant with her baby and she's affected by reactive oxygen species or oxygen free radicals or oxidative species or whatever, the number of Sertoli cells with, I'm sorry, this is sometimes I get calls and they cut this. Like I was saying, the number of Sertoli cells that are available in the so the baby is born with a reduced number of Sertoli cells. Sertoli cells are sort of little factories that exist in the testes and are responsible for producing spermatozoa. And so we have a problem even in the number of sperm that this baby will produce when he gets to puberty. Okay, so while if a man is exposed himself to these oxidative to these free radicals, the effect is more likely to be reversible. It has more to do about the Sertoli cell maturation, not the number of cells, and so it's more about the spermatogenesis, about the differentiation between. So it's about creating the spermatozoa. And since sperm is produced in 75 to 90 days, if we remove the exposure to these factors, it's reversible. Okay, so those are the cases where we can act, because if the problem has happened 30 or 35 years ago when that lady was pregnant with her baby, and because of that he was born with a reduced number of Sertoli cells, unfortunately there's little that we can do. If the problem occurs later and it's more related with spermatogenesis, okay, the way that the cells that originate the spermatozoa, the spermatogonium, differentiate into a mature sperm, this is reversible. And if we remove the activity of those oxidative stress, we will not, that will go away. Okay, and so we can, so that man can become more fertile if that was the cause that was causing his lower number of embryos. In fact, for example, there was some very interesting case. There were two very interesting cases regarding this that I brought here. For example, in 1976 in Italy, there was a factory in a place called Seveso who had who had an accident, and this accident, the Seveso accident, is known to be the highest known exposure to dioxins. Okay, and so what happened back there is that uh, the men that were directly exposed to the Seveso accident had transitory diminution on their sperm count.
Oh.
However, the 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 children that were born from ladies who were pregnant back then had major effects on their sperm counts. Okay, so this was an unfortunate but very radical experiment that showed that it is more the effect while someone is pregnant, the effect of oxidative stress is more radical than the man being exposed himself. There is also another interesting study, this one on tobacco, that
Okay.
that substantial that show that substantial reductions in sperm counts, about 40% in three different studies, were found in men whose mothers have smoked heavily during
Wow.
pregnancy. However, while comparing to men that actually smoked, and but whose mothers were not smokers, the non-smokers, sons of mother who smoked, had more significant reductions in their sperm count than the smokers who were born from non-smoking mothers. Okay, so oxidative free radicals, reactive oxygen species, wherever we might call them, are very important. They are all over, and they can have different impacts. Luckily, if you have been only exposed to that later in life, that could be reversible.
Yeah.
If your mother was the one exposed to it while she was pregnant with you, unfortunately, those effects are likely to be irreversible. Okay, and the same happens with alcohol. There are studies that men who drink heavily, obviously, alcohol has an inhibitory effect over the hormones, and so it sort of feeds its own effect. It's all like a snowballing effect. But but with alcohol, it's more or less the same. If you remove the exposure to alcohol, you will recover sperm production. And so, and the way that alcohol damages fertility is either through a direct effect on Leydig and Sertoli cells. Sertoli cells are the ones who produce the sperm. Leydig cells are the ones who produce the hormones that help the sperm grow. And the other one, and also direct cell damage on testes. And obviously, alcohol has some other effects on the hypothalamic pituitary gonadal axis, but it's so it's more complicated. I will just add one more thing about this issue.
Yes.
Um, more or less 10 years ago, we at Ferti Central and the University of Aveiro, we had this very funny idea. It was funny at the beginning, and then it became serious because here in Portugal we have major, huge student parties in the month of May. As probably people who are not from Portugal and are listening to us don't know, Andrea certainly knows that there is what we call sort of an academic week where students drink
A
absurd
lot.
quantities of alcohol. They party for a week. They don't sleep. They do, well, everything you might think and worst. And that is very concentrated during that very specific week. That happens in all universities. And back then we were working in some projects on reactive oxygen species and apoptosis on the University of Aveiro. And so we said, out of a joke, let's collect some sperm from the students before the student parties, and
And
then
after.
afterwards, and then 3 months later to see what happened. And well, initially we decided to do this as a joke, okay? Then the press was talking about this all over, and it became very serious. We ended up publishing a paper in scientific reports, which is a very important scientific magazine. It belongs to the Nature group, and then there was a PhD thesis done on this, and several other papers and studies. So we produced a lot of studies on this matter. But what we found in this initial idea. So it was a lot of fun. We've created some little bags for the students to carry on, and what we have seen is that immediately after the week of the Queima das Fitas, the
Yeah.
hello.
Yeah.
Can you hear me? And yes,
Sorry.
immediately after the
Yeah.
academic festivities, we saw a diminution in sperm volume, a diminution in sperm progressivity, an increase, all of this statistically significant, an increase in non-progressive motility, a growth in the number of immotile spermatozoa, a drop in the number of normal spermatozoa, an increase in the number of head effects, and an increase in the number in the amount of oxidative stress markers. Okay, so drinking major amounts of alcohol and
It's not good.
tobacco had this very serious effect. And then we checked the same volunteers 3 months later in September. And so most of the it was really interesting that there was some recovery, but not as much as we would expect.
Okay.
So people, young boys that had a normal sperm before these festivities, after it was completely destroyed, not completely, okay, but it was
Yes.
significantly destroyed. And even 3 months later, there were still effects. They were still not normal. Okay, so
Yeah.
obviously this is a very radical experience. People trying for a baby later in life are not having the same lifestyle as these guys in their young 20s had, but at the same time they were in the peak of their fertility. Okay,
Yeah.
and so this was a very radical experience that was sort of a very interesting evidence on how hard can this get. Okay, obviously if you do what Portuguese students do in that week, you will die. Okay, if you do it every day, you will die, and fertility is probably your least concern.
Yeah.
But I mean, this is somehow a very radical example on how damaging can oxidative stress be to your reproductive cells.
And Vladimiro, that takes me to a very interesting question, which is in clinical practice, then for people who are listening, maybe that means that if their sperm analysis shows that there's something abnormal, or if their DNA fragmentation test shows that there is something abnormal, um, and in women's case, then we can't really see egg quality as well as we see through male fertility tests. But in women, I would say maybe the failure of the egg to be fertilized and to develop. Does that mean that that gives people an opportunity to look at their potential exposure to oxidative stress factors and maybe do something about it?
Yes, I would just like to add something on the women's side. Um, it is not as clear as with the male because the sperm is very easy to study. You can get easily a sample of sperm and do whatever tests you might need. You can understand whether you have, you can test for many reactive oxygen species and do a lot of studies. So with women, it's obviously more complicated by physical reasons, but there are studies, and obviously those are theories. We cannot be completely sure. But oxidative stress has been associated with polycystic ovary syndrome.
Okay.
Okay, because so it seems to be an association between polycystic ovarian syndrome and because on the underlying causes of PCOS there is hyperinsulinemia, hyperandrogenism, obesity, and so on. And so obviously it's very difficult to understand what happened first,
Absolutely.
but if it was oxidative stress or the opposite. But so we don't know whether it is the PCOS that caused oxidative stress or it was oxidative stress that led some abnormalities that ultimately end up causing some of the features of polycystic ovarian syndrome. Obviously, there is most likely a genetic cause for PCOS. If a woman has PCOS, it's not by taking antioxidants that she will be rid of it. However, those effects of hyperinsulinemia, hyperandrogenism, oligomenorrhea, obesity, insulin resistance, wherever, all of this, they cause oxidative stress, and if there is if there are some other factors causing it as well, it will be worse. Okay, so this is one of the examples where a female fertility issue is associated with oxidative stress. So there are many studies. It's very complex, the relationship. There are studies postulating on the mechanism such relationship. Personally, I don't agree with it. I just agree that it is a fact. It is that PCOS patients have higher reactive oxygen species concentrations, and that is very well proven. Okay, so this is if a
Yes.
woman already has PCOS, she should be sorry because
Yes.
every time I
It's your
receive
call.
every time I receive a phone call, it is the call the call gets cut. So as I was saying, these women that have higher levels of reactive oxygen species, they should benefit from antioxidant therapy. There is another cause of infertility, of female infertility, that's very associated with oxidative stress. It's endometriosis. Again, it's hard
Oh
to
yeah.
define what happens first, if it was the endometriosis or the oxidative stress. But probably those are things that feed each other. Okay, so you're probably not getting endometriosis because of the oxidative stress, but you're having endometriosis and then you have oxidative stress, and the oxidative stress makes it worse, and so on. There is also an association between oxidative stress and pregnancy complications.
Okay.
Placenta previa, risk of miscarriage, spontaneous abortion. There is also a theory, preeclampsia. There is also a theory that this could be caused by I'm sorry, I just lost what I was saying. But anyway, so all of these factors indicate that this is something that we should worry about. Okay.
And you mentioned people being able to take antioxidants. Is this something that then everyone who is trying to conceive should consider, or maybe just some people who have some of this, and I understand that could be potentially a topic for a completely different InstaLive, because there's
Yeah.
so many antioxidants, and all of
Yes.
them with different kind of research available. So we could consider something else just on the topic, which antioxidant for which problem. But
Yeah.
in general, would you say that then maybe men should maybe consider more than women?
Um, well, um, I would say that um, first of all, we have to understand the role of antioxidants. So, uh, again, like I said, oxidative stress can make worse some pre-existing conditions. It can also cause lots of problems on their own. Okay, um, so so we and especially we know that if you live a normal, well balanced and healthy life, and you do an healthy nutrition, you are probably not needing some all of these antioxidants. However, if the problem is already there, so if you are already under a lot of pressure from reactive oxygen species and free radicals, uh, then you should attack it. Okay, so I always say that in the worst case scenario, it will not do any harm.
Okay.
Okay, so obviously, if you're a smoker, if you are obese, if you work with pesticides, if you are exposed to radiation, if you have a very stressful way of life, if you do drink a lot of alcohol and you do drugs, okay, first of all, you need to correct those
That
underlying factors. Okay, you're not taking antioxidants, so you can smoke all you want.
that's a
Okay.
very good point.
Okay, so it's important to know where we are and where we want to go. But I think that this could be very helpful. Okay, there are numerous studies. Obviously, if you go to the guys that sell these products, they all have wonderful studies to show you on
Yeah.
the advantage of vitamin D, vitamin E, vitamin C, carnitine, coenzyme Q10, and whatever, glutathione. I mean, there are hundreds of things available in the market. Um, Probably they all have reason. Okay, they're all right, because there are certainly specific patients for whom this is necessary. Okay, and so this is something, and you will find many products with this kind of components on sale. So one thing, normally what I tell patients is this: we shouldn't allow these products to divert us from what's really the bottom line here. And the bottom line is to have a healthy living and lifestyle. Okay, these are this should be used on top of that and not instead of that. Okay, it's a very important take-home message, because obviously it's an easy solution. If you take a pill and you can drink whatever you want, uh, maybe you will keep it that way.
I think that's a very good point, because otherwise we could feel tempted to, for example, continue eating everything we want and then take a diet pill. So that's not what we are advocating at all. Bottom line is to have a healthier lifestyle. So here, things that would be helpful for people who are listening would be reducing alcohol, eating maybe a balanced diet, a Mediterranean diet, with fewer um, bad foods or fewer fast foods, moving, keeping your body active, and and then you mentioned all sorts of pesticides and toxins in the environment as well, and just be more mindful that men are more prone to have the effects of oxidative stress more than women. Is that is that a fair thing to say?
I believe it is. Okay. Well, at least we have a better understanding of what happens with men. I do believe that some of the problems, especially those PCOS cases and endometriosis cases that we're dealing with, and we know that those are very severe infertility cases. I believe that in so oxidative stress has a role. I actually have in front of me because I gathered some documentation before talking to you. And one of the articles that I found, it indicates under the oxidative stress category, it says lifestyle factors that can cause oxidative stress, and we're talking about female infertility, and so it's obesity, undernutrition, recreational drugs, tobacco, alcohol, and environmental factors. And so, on the other hand, there is the reproductive pathology, okay, the problems like PCOS, endometriosis, preeclampsia, age-related fertility decline, menopause, and unexplained fertility, and so the problem is this. So we have all of these factors, and this is all associated with oxidative stress. So I believe that by controlling these factors, we will be controlling some of the pre-existing damage, or and maybe preventing new damage from occurring. It's not a
Yeah,
miracle, but it will certainly help.
yeah, I think it's all the little bits that can maybe help. There's not that one thing, one formula. Otherwise, I think our patients wouldn't. We would be able to help them much quicker if there was a fertility formula that worked for everyone. But
Yeah.
I remember in the beginning you were saying about infections, and when we have infections, we increase oxidative stress in our cells naturally. So maybe it might be that by having PCOS, which is a systemic metabolic disease, or endometriosis, um, it can also increase the oxidative stress, and maybe vice versa, and then it makes it worse. I don't know.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I think it's so related, and there is another group of environmental sources of oxidative stress that's important to talk about, which are the endocrine disrupting chemicals, because there is also plenty of information available on this subject, and it's something that even has some political impact. There was actually a decision from Donald Trump about because one of the first things Trump did when he got to power was to cut the funding for the research on endocrine disruptors.
oh,
Okay, because some of these agents that are causing oxidative stress, they are, for example, it was found that, well, I was a child in the 70s, okay? So, recent investigations have shown that people that were born in the 70s and in the early 80s, we were playing, my generation was playing with toys that had a lot of bisphenol
yeah,
A. Okay,
yeah, BPA.
okay, so it's incredible because I mean we were putting in the mouth a lot of BPA. So we
That's
were.
true.
This is a very known endocrine disrupting chemical. It causes it can cause, obviously, then it's a lottery whether you are more susceptible or not, but it can cause major male fertility issues, and also and obviously it is done also via oxidative stress, the damage it does to reproductive cells while you are still a child. I mean, this is more of a a consequence of the times that we're living. I do believe that I'm not a catastrophist person. I do believe that we're now, for this current generation, is less exposed to these agents than my generation, and my generation was more exposed than yours. Okay,
Yeah.
so I mean, humanity is learning from its mistakes, but the people that are now trying for a baby have been exposed to a lot of oxidative stress and endocrine disruptors,
Yeah.
and we have to deal with that.
And Vladimir, if we could end on like a positive note, because you're not a catastrophic man, let's end on a positive note. If you could tell me 3 actions that the people who are listening today could do to reduce their oxidative stress, what can people do? Really
Well,
practical, positive things.
well, so first of all, have an healthy life. Okay, don't. I mean, you don't have to exaggerate. For example, if you do too much sport, you're also generating oxidative stress. I mean, you don't have to run 2 hours between 5 and 7 a.m. Okay, that's wrong. You have to live a good balanced life with a good balanced nutrition. I would say that's 90% of the way. 90% because they're
Cool.
freezing. Sorry.
Yes, sorry.
Um, no, no worries. And then I would say, obviously, look for specialized help and try to get mechanisms to cope with the stress. Because obviously, I always tell this to patients. I'm still waiting for the first patient who is not under stress. Okay, everybody who does fertility treatments or is passing through infertility has to deal with a certain amount of stress. Okay, sometimes a lot of stress. And so it's just part of the process. It's normal, but we do need to find coping mechanisms. There are no miracles. If somebody says to me, you shouldn't be stressed, I get more stressed when I hear that. Okay,
Yes,
so
that's true.
you need to really find people like Andrea that
Oh,
can
thank
help
you.
us. That
Distress.
exactly to especially, for example, groups where people change ideas, where they tend to normalize, they tend to lift the pressure. They meet peers. They meet people that are going through the same process. They sort of uh, get together to find common goals, like let's see if tomorrow you're still 10 days without drinking, things like that.
That that's a very good point, because there was an interesting study this year at ESRA that showed that people who were stressed were more likely to have unhealthy behavior. So eating
Right.
crappy foods or drinking alcohol or doing all those things that then ultimately will end up affecting fertility as well.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's
and Vladimir, how can people find you?
well, I work in 2 clinics in Portugal, in Ferticentro, at Ferticentro in Coimbra, and also at Procriar at Porto. They can Google our clinic, and they can use the Instagram, our website. They can fill a formulary, and or they can just send us messages through Instagram, and we are here, and we are very happy to help everyone.
Brilliant, Vladimir. Thank you so much. I think
Thank you, Andre.
it was so good to understand the impact, what is oxidative stress, and the impact it can have on fertility. And I think you explained it so well. I'm going to leave this video on IGTV for everyone to watch. And do get in touch with Vladimiro. They have an amazing clinic in Porto and Coimbra, and they help a lot of people. They are an international team as well. They speak English and French and I don't know how many,
Yeah, many
all
languages.
languages, and that's it. And look,
Well,
Vladimiro, look what I have here in front of
oh,
me.
okay. It's a pièce de résistance for this.
Yes, a custard tart. And on that note,
Okay, so
thank you
let's all close our eyes and say a little prayer for Andrea's
for me.
oxidative stress levels.
Exactly. Thank
Well,
you,
really nice
Vladimiro.
talking to you, Andrea. You too.
Bye.
Bye bye then. Cheers.